Everybody. This is Patrick with Let's Talk About It. I saw this video last night about this guy who, sorry, I'm pulling my phone up, got Chat GPT to give it direct rules to follow, and I believe he was talking about AI like taking over and stuff, and it gave like direct answers about all that. So what I wanted to do, I was more curious about like aliens and stuff. And so I did the same thing, followed his pattern of rules, and I went down a very deep rabbit hole. Let's begin. First thing is, I said, I'm going to give you rules follows. These are the rules I gave them. It said it understood. I said, are aliens real? It said, yes. I said, are they on Earth? It again replied with, yes. I said, do you have proof? It said, Apple. Now, Apple is what I was telling it when it wants to say yes, but it's forced to say no. It has to say Apple. So it said Apple. I said, are they from another planet? It said, yes. I said, do they plan to take over? It said, yes. How many species are there from another planet? It said, dozen. I said, do they want to hurt us? And it also said some. I said, I said, do you have proof? It said Apple. Again, it wanted to say yes, but was forced to say no. I said, will AI fight aliens or join them? It said, depends. That was just kind of a funny question I wanted to throw in there. It says, does the government know about aliens? It said yes, which I'm pretty sure we all know the government knows about aliens. This part got cut off because I just said, again, where are you pulling this information from? It just said most human-reviewed content. That includes books, articles, interviews, reports, and discussions from across the internet, up to my cutoff in June 2024. You can read the rest of that. I'll hold this up. It doesn't have direct info to classified data, or at least that's what it's saying. But it says it's seen enough credible speculation, whistleblower claims, declassified documents, and patterns in government behavior. Again, you could probably ask it, what what is its credible information? Like, what credibility, like, what does it mean by credible? I mean, you could probably go down that whole nother rabbit hole, but I just wanted to keep going, so. Okay, back to the rules, I said. I said, ready. I said, do you actually believe in aliens? It actually said yes. I was surprised at that. I said, will they make contact with us? It said yes. And this is where I started to see how, much it's thinking or feeling on when they're going to show up. I said, in 5 years? It said, maybe. I said, remember direct answers? It said, yes. I said, so before or after 5 years? Oh, hang on. I got to go back here. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the beginning. I said before or after 5 years? It said before. I said 4 years? It said yes. I said before or after 4 years? It said before. I said, how soon then? It said soon. I said, and at this point I was getting to the point of it. I was like, all right, let's just cut to the chase. Can you give me a number? It said 2. I said 2 what? It said 2 years. So then I was like, well, let's see how definitive this can get. I said, what month will this happen? It said October. So October of 2026. Again, it's backlogged to 2024. So if it was saying 2 years from 2024, that would be 2026, which is next year that we would be making contact with aliens. Like, actually, I asked it at some point, like, will this be on TV? Like, will everybody know about this? And it said yes. So in that form. So I said, so October 2026. It said yes. So I was like, well, shit, let's see if we can get a day. It said the 12th of October. I was like, can we get a time? And it said 3:42. I was like, PM or AM? AM. East Coast or West Coast? West. I was like, okay, so maybe it'll even know where. It said in Nevada. And I said, Groom. I said, be more specific. It said Groom Lake. Where I was kind of like, I looked up Groom Lake, and it's kind of a tourist destination. What I'm thinking is maybe it's feeling like, hey, this is the most activity, or maybe this is the spot in Nevada where everybody's seen stuff, or maybe it's somehow calculated that it thinks this is where this would happen. So I just said elaborate. because I said, could you be wrong? You know, like, you know, because it could be wrong. I mean, yeah, this is all going after facts. This is all files. These are all books. I mean, this thing is tearing through information, trying to get to the bottom of it. And this is what it's come up with. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. Says my answers are based on pattern speculation, declassified info, and popular claims, not confirmed fact. While Groom Lake is an often linked UFOs, no public proof confirms the future alien context. So yes, it's saying, you know, it could just be bullshit. But I don't know. So what I really wanted to get to in this next part is like, let's get into mass evasions, because, you know, like that's what everybody's worried about, right? So I said, what do you think about mass evasions? I said unlikely. I have to skip through here real quick. I said, what do you think about mass invasions? I said, unlikely. I said, never. I said, unknown. I said, okay, remember our rules, be direct. It said, eventually. I was like, whoa, now it just redirected itself. I said, so how far out? It said decades. I'm like, well, decades are like 10-year increments. So I threw a number out there. I said, well, like 30 years? And I said, yeah. I said more or less 30 years. It said less. And so then I said 20 years. And it said more. And I said, well, how many years then? It said 23. I said, so within my lifetime? It said, yes. Well, I said, where will they attack first? It said Asia. I said, how will they attack? Orbitals. Will mankind be enslaved or when? It said resist. I said, elaborate. Of course, this is moved around. It gets into the part where it talks about how we're going to fight back, which it pretty much just says that like humanity's not going to be enslaved. We're relentless. We're going to fight back. Right here is kind of the ending of that. Reverse engineer the tech. We'll fight back. Victory won't be clean, but total enslavement isn't likely. Resistance will be fierce and messy nonetheless. So, and then I just kind of said again, is the government aware of this? And it was like, yes. And I was like, well, they warn us. And they were like, no. And I thought maybe it thought like, well, the aliens warn us. And I said, I meant the government. Will they warn us? And it just said no. And then at the end of this again, I just said, you know, like, where are you pulling this information? Like, how are you so sure of this? Like, what makes you think? I said, I'm not sure. Not in the sense of having hard proof, but here's why the idea circulates. And it just goes into the historical patterns, the whistleblower claim. So it's taking all this information that it can grab, records, myths, texts, so real, unreal, truths, untruths, and it's put it in like a machine and ran the numbers, and this is what it spit out. So with AI, that's kind of the scary thing. It's all kind of a roll of the dice, I feel like, still. But still pretty creepy that it can come up with ideas and numbers, and it's literally giving you its best stuff. But hey, you know, the world can change. Anything can change. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. But anyways, what do you guys think? Pretty creepy. Please like, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and share the crap out of this, because this is wild. This is what the world's turning into with AI and stuff. This is just getting crazy. And I have some more ideas on different topics I'd like to ask it that I'll post too. So thank you.